All right, this is another wrestling podcast, and I'm so happy to have today's guest on. He is an award-winning cartoonist, a New York Times best-selling author. He makes his own comics, and he's the author of Andre the Giant: Life and Legend. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Box Brown. Box, thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on your podcast. You guys interview a lot of my favorite wrestlers of all time.
Oh, that's awesome. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with Mr. Brown here, I went down the rundown. He's a cartoonist and author and all that. But how did you get into the wrestling side of things? Have you always been a fan of wrestling?
Yeah, so I got into wrestling in a weird time period because I kind of sincerely got really, really into it around 1990,
Okay.
which was a little late for the wrestling boom, you know. So like I got into it like towards the end of it, and you know, it was weird because like WWE at the time was like losing popularity, you know what I mean? Like the guy that, like my friend that got me into wrestling in 1990, like 2 years later was like not into wrestling anymore, you know?
Yeah.
So but I was like hooked, you know. WrestleMania 6 was the first like pay-per-view I ever saw. And then like after that, it was just like off to the races.
Well, did you have any wrestling books or wrestling action figures or anything like that at the time?
Oh yeah, I mean like I had tons of the like not the original like rubber WWE guys, but the second edition, like the small plastic guys.
Yes.
I had like a ton of them, and I actually started like rebuying those in the last like 6 months on eBay and stuff. So yeah, I had all that stuff. I had like the WWE. You know, I went to the WWF warehouse sale in like 1991 it was at the WWF warehouse in you know, in Connecticut. I got like a bunch of like the Hulk Hogan jacket with his like, you know, the white sleeves and stuff, and got to meet Dusty Rhodes and get an autograph there. So I've been following wrestling pretty closely for a long time now.
That's awesome. Now, obviously, Andre the Giant was either a favorite of yours or just somebody that you always wanted to work with. But who were some of your favorite wrestlers growing up?
You know, honestly, you know, growing up when I was a kid and I was like first getting into it, wrestling, you know, Ultimate Warrior was super rad and everybody loved Hulk Hogan at the time. But you know, as a young guy, like my favorite wrestler was Bret the Hitman Hart. Like I always thought that he was like the best. He, like even before he started, you know, getting his like singles championships, like, you know, Vince McMahon talks about how like, you know, Bret Hart was like so popular even when he was in the Hart Foundation. For some reason, he just had like whatever it was, he had something that people liked, and whatever, you know, I was one of those people that was on, you know, all about Bret Hart right away.
Okay, so I have to ask, obviously, was this getting into cartoon drawing, artwork, author? Is that what you had planned on doing when you were younger, or is this just kind of something that happened as you got older?
Well, you know, it's funny, like, when I was a kid, like, yeah, like, if you asked me when I was, like, 12, what I wanted to be, like, when I was older, it would have been a cartoonist. But then, like, I kind of got out of it in high school and stuff. Like, I was, like, I didn't draw at all in high school. Like, I kind of, like, shied away from art, really. I don't know why. I think it was, like, you know, when you're a teenager, it's like you just don't want to do anything or, like, try anything.
Yeah.
So, like, the fact that I had some sort of, like, talent towards art made me feel like if I did try it or did work on it, I would have to work hard at it. And I didn't want to do that. You know, it was just like this lack of motivation thing. But then, yeah, I got back into art and comics in my 20s and in my early 20s, and then so I've been making comics professionally now for about I don't know. I think the last time I had like a even a part-time job was like 2010.
Awesome. Now,
Yeah.
so you've done a lot of wrestling artwork, which can be found on your site, boxbrown.com. But the book itself is pretty amazing because it's it's not an autobiography of Andre the Giant, but it has a lot of stories about Andre the Giant, and it's drawn in cartoon form, which I'll be completely honest, I went to Barnes & Noble. I didn't know that this book was coming out. I picked it up. I read it cover to cover in Barnes & Noble and then went and bought it. So it's a very easy read, and it's an amazing book. So where did you come up with the idea to write this book?
It was like I was like in between projects. I've been doing a bunch of different things, and I was like, of course, I had kind of gotten out of wrestling, following it super closely for like a while in the 2000s, like probably from like 2001 to like 2009 or something like that, 2010 maybe, where I was like kind of like touching, not fully like watching every week or anything like that. So, and it was around this time that I had started getting back into it, and then I had discovered all the shoot interviews that were out, and just watching those, I was like so fascinated by them. You know what I mean? Like, as someone who had only seen, like, you very rarely got to see like the behind the scenes stuff with wrestling. You know what I mean? It was like even in the early days of the internet, you kind of get like the rumors and stuff. If you had an Observer subscription, you got behind the scenes stuff, but not like the way they had these first person interviews with guys in the ring, and they would tell all these stories. And I think it was via like watching them, they would start telling all these Andre stories. And one day I was like, wow, I watched a video of Barry Darso, Smash from Demolition, like drinking a beer in a parking lot, telling a story about how Andre the Giant and Blackjack Mulligan had gotten into a fight. And this was Blackjack Mulligan had told Barry that story, and this is Barry telling it third hand now to like a guy in a parking lot, And so I heard that, and I was like, oh my god, that would be such a great comic. So I made that into like a little mini comic, and then I kind of got into like looking up all these Andre stories, and before you know it, it was just like, well, it seems clear that there should be like an Andre biography out there, and because there really wasn't one. There, WWE put out one, and that was, rehashing all the stuff we saw on TV. There was nothing about his life really in it. And they had made this an A&E biography of Andre in the early 2000s, and that was the thing that really shined a light on Andre's story for me, where I was like, this is really compelling, and his story is really captivating and motivating, and it's something that, like, I always, I'm pretty young, I'm only 35 now, and I would be like constantly considering my own death, right?
Yeah.
And then you got a guy like Andre who knew from a very young age that he wouldn't live long, and he made, he lived his life to the fullest, and he was disabled. People don't think of him that way because he's so big, but he was actually, had a very rough time of it and didn't really get the sympathy from people, the way, other people who are disabled and maybe have a more obvious disability. If you don't think of a guy like Andre the Giant as disabled because he's big and strong, but he was too big, and he had all his clothes custom made, and he didn't fit in. People saw him as like a circus freak when he walked into the room, even before he was famous, because he was just so big, and I think that feeling, in a way, is something that a lot of people relate to. A lot of my comics friends do, and I think a lot of wrestling fans do too, you know, because being a wrestling fan is like, you know, something that people look at as like a low art form.
Yeah.
If they consider it an art form at all, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Now, I have to ask, because I went on a mini shopping spree today. I got on your website, and you're actually selling some of the original drawings for the book, as well as other wrestling things. I picked up an Edge and Christian drawing that you did, and then also I found out that you did you were contributing to two other comic books called Screwjob 1 and Screwjob 2, and I bought both of those. So can you talk to us a little bit about where fans of this can find, you know, your work and some of your other stuff that you're doing?
Okay, so yeah, first of all, I think everybody who's a wrestling fan should check out those two books, Screwjob, which are put out by a small press out in Providence called Hidden Fortress. And they, you know, that's kind of like an artsy comics take on wrestling, and it's like all this two-color, it's really cool, really, really, really good stuff. And it's like, you know, some real stuff and a lot of fictional stuff, a lot of fun stuff. It's really cool. Both of them are really cool, and there's going to be a third issue. So yeah, I also, you know, I sell original art from the book, and I had to do an illustration job where I drew like 40 different wrestlers, so I have some of those left over too. And also, no, I don't have this stuff for sale, but recently, I just think this would be a fun story, but recently did some posters for Jim Ross. He came to Philadelphia, and I did a poster for him, and he came to, I did the poster for his, the WrestleMania, the day before WrestleMania gig.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really cool. JR's a really cool guy to work with, really friendly and nice guy. And another cool thing that I got to do recently was I got to be on After Chat with Bill Apter, and I got to see Bill Apter's house. It was great. I got to see all his memorabilia and stuff, and then we went out for pizza. It was awesome.
That is awesome. Now, I have to ask because it's selfish, but I want to know. You did Andre the Giant. Is there any thoughts about doing any other wrestling books in the future?
You know, I'm not in a position to announce anything.
Okay.
But let's say right now I'm currently working on a book about Tetris, like the game Tetris.
That's amazing.
But yeah, but the book I'm working on after it looks like there will be a wrestling component to it.
Okay, great. Now,
but no promises, but it's looking that way.
Okay, great. Now, what has the reception been for this book from not only fans, but I'm sure you've bumped into some wrestlers or, you know, have talked to them. You said you spoke to Jim Ross and Bill Apter. Has it all been positive?
You know, I haven't gotten any. No one's wanted to beat me up yet. You know, I was kind of afraid when I was making the book that some wrestler would cut a promo on me or something like that, or for getting something wrong. But I haven't run into anything like that. I've gotten a lot of very nice, very positive responses from people, and a lot of the people that a lot of people that I love in the wrestling world, you know, like Jim Ross and Bill Apter and Matthew, who does Botchamania. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's great. Yeah, Botchamania is great, and you know he was really. I heard some nice things from him, and I got to did a signing at what's the name of the wrestling bar and restaurant that's in Chicago.
Squared Circle?
Squared Circle, yeah, at Squared Circle, and got to hang out with Tara, that's her TNA name that runs that.
Victoria.
Lisa Marie Barone is her name. And she was really great and really, you know, was very welcoming, had a nice little party for us when we were there. And it's just been really great. You know, after working with just, you know, the general comics audience for a long time, like, I find that the wrestling fans and the wrestling audience, like, it's great. Like, it's way more welcoming than comics fans. Like, wrestling fans are ready to just engage and are just really happy kind of with everything. I think there's a lot of you hear a lot about, like, the IWC, you know, the Internet Wrestling crowd or whatever, and they're very, you know, how they're opinionated or impossible to please and all that. But I've found that wrestling fans are fantastic people.
Well,
and it's very easy to make friends in the wrestling community.
And you're also on the, you know, you were talking earlier about not being in wrestling when it was, you know, very popular, but right now the popularity of wrestling's growing all the time, and there's other artists out there, one named Rob Schamberger who works with WWE now, and he does a lot of wrestling artwork, but I think that wrestling fans, there's a good crowd of them that like this sort of thing. They like artwork depicting their favorite wrestlers and stuff, and there's been none of that. So now I think you're at the right time that you can make this work. So
boy, I'm so jealous. I'm really jealous of Rob. I mean, when the book was first coming out, I contacted Rob. He was really friendly, and just asking him about, you know, wrestling shows maybe to go sell the book and stuff. And now I see him on TV doing a little vignette with Kevin Owens. I'm, like, so jealous.
Yeah, it's definitely going to pay off. I would say for you, obviously, just to keep at it, because lots of people I know have got the book. They're very excited about it, and you know, I think that there's a great crossover between wrestling fans and comic book fans, and, you know, just kind of, I think it comes from the fact that most wrestlers in the past looked like superheroes. So I think that I think you've got
you know, it is actually really similar in so many ways. It's like, you know, WWE right now is like this big monolith, and they're the same as, like, Marvel and DC are this big monolith, and how, like, you know, there's the indies in pro wrestling, and they're usually doing a lot of, like, much more interesting work than the big monolith. The same thing in comics, you know. Absolutely.
Now, obviously, you know some of the guys today. Are you watching wrestling these days?
Oh yeah. I can't get away from it.
Perfect. Now, you know, we know you're a busy man, but I want to just ask you real quick. Have you thought about doing commissions?
You know, I do commissions occasionally. I've done some like sketch commissions and stuff. Right now, I'm incredibly busy with the Tetris book, and also moving, which has been, you know, which is one of the great tragedies in life, you know. But I probably will open up commissions again. Just if you follow me on Twitter, follow my website, and usually at least once a year, I have commissions where I'm drawing wrestlers.
Perfect. Now I mentioned it earlier. Boxbrown.com. It's kind of a one-stop shop website for you. Talks a little bit about you, and you can buy stuff on there. Where can fans keep up with you on social media?
Okay, so it's just Box Brown on Twitter, and also I run a comics publishing house called Retrofit Comics. So we put out a new comic every month, all kinds of different indie artists. So you can find stuff about that at retrofitcomics.com.
And you mentioned the Tetris book. Is there a date that may drop?
The Tetris book, I'm still working on it, but it will be out next fall. So we got about a year before that comes out.
All right. Well, we would love to have you back anytime. We love talking shop with you, and thank you for the book. It's an amazing book, and we're looking forward to some more maybe wrestling stuff. Like I said, I don't want to get you in trouble, but hopefully in the future we'll see some of that from you. And thank you so much for coming on.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me.